Are you ready to conquer the MCAT and secure your future in medicine? Look no further than Med School Coach. With our unparalleled expertise and cutting-edge resources, you'll tackle the MCAT with confidence. Our practice exams, crafted by the world's leading MCAT experts, provide the most realistic simulation available. Discover your strengths and weaknesses with in-depth analytics and detailed explanations for every question. Plus, with options like our free half-length exam and affordable bundles, mastering the MCAT has never been easier or more accessible. Don't just prepare for the MCAT, excel with Med School Coach.
Creating professional and personal life boundaries. And of course, engaging in hobbies and building supportive relationship. All of that will increase their energy replenishment as opposed to depletion.
Welcome to the Prospective Doctor podcast, brought to you by Med School Coach. Join us weekly for stories and insights to empower pre-med and medical students to pursue their aspirations of becoming doctors. Hear from physicians, deans, advisors, and industry experts on becoming a standout candidate and what life is truly like in the medical field. Let passion ignite your journey toward residency and becoming a doctor.
The topic of burnout in medical students and in physicians is of paramount importance. The scope, Erkeda, of burnout in healthcare in general is making the headlines. You know that, worldwide. And it's due to the vast prevalence of burnout and its dreadful consequences for all the players, from physicians to healthcare systems to patients. And it's very important to discuss it. We started CardioSeeds as a small company a couple of years ago, actually almost 2 years to date. And our mission was very simple. It's focused on stress and burnout reduction as a critical method, because I'm a cardiologist, as a critical method for lowering cardiovascular risk in healthcare professionals, because we truly believe that chronic unaddressed stress and burnout is one of the most important risk factors for chronic disease and cardiovascular disease in general. And so I started this company almost like immediately after the pandemic that exposed those deep-rooted, deep-seated issues within our medical community, including unresolved burnout and stress. And, I have done 20 years of cardiology before that, practicing cardiology, cardiovascular safety, etc. But when the COVID-19 pandemic exposed those issues, and the Surgeon General of the United States, Dr. Murthy, stated that our health depends on the well-being of our health task force and that we must take actions, then I essentially jumped into the action and I answered that call by starting CardioSeeds company and CardioSeeds podcast. And our mission, as I said, is deeply influenced by my personal and professional journey. I am a cardiologist here, but I am originally an international medical graduate 30-some years ago. And so I personally went through 2 major burnouts, and I endured some obstacles on my way to success and on my way to my perfect lifestyle and perfect life-work balance. I experienced everything from sexism, from the ethnocentrism, you can imagine, to microaggressions and all those things. So I could relate to the problems that people are talking about and surfacing due to COVID. And we equip our healthcare professionals, CardioSeeds, with knowledge and tools for success. We advocate for work-life balance. We advocate for long-term resilience. We created a program called Reclaim by CardioSeeds, which actually uses lifestyle interventions, so lifestyle medicine interventions, behavioral coaching. We also do advocacy to reduce burnout in healthcare professionals, including medical students and residents, because we truly believe that starting earlier is the key when things are not deeply rooted yet and deeply seated with the person. I wrote a book. The title is Resilience in Scrubs, Thriving as a Woman Resident Physician, actually, kind of listing all those tools and burnout reduction strategies through the residency and training period.
I love that. And I think that it is great that you're taking the perspective of heart health because it's so important. It's cardiovascular issues are like the number one cause of death. And we know that stress can contribute to that. Like you said, you're a lifestyle medicine doctor as well. So am I. And it's so important that we think about those factors like stress and sleep is in addition to things like exercise and diet that people think about. And one thing that we notice in people who are in medical training and as they continue throughout their careers is we don't get the things like sleep and the things that keep us well and help decrease that stress and have that stress management. We're kind of on like that high alert. And especially even depending on what specialty you are in, it can go even further. So like for emergency positions, their schedules are always wonky or they'll have night shift and day shift. And you're seeing that there are poor outcomes with that. So I'm sure we're going to dive into that. But before we do, I want us to kind of take a step back because some of our listeners may be pre-meds and things like that, and they may not necessarily know what is burnout because it is, like you said, all over the headlines, but what does it actually mean?
This is the most important question. Why understanding the distinction between stress and burnout is crucial for its prevention because we need to know what we're facing before trying to prevent something, right? Particularly in high-pressure settings like healthcare that adapted behaviors and culture of the iron dog culture and those behaviors that frankly discourage empathy to self and one another and promote hard work, promote perfection, etc. So the scale of burnout in modern medicine is staggering, Erkeda, especially in high-risk specialties, like you mentioned already, emergency medicine. But in general, according to the most recent Medscape Physician Burnout and Depression report, 63% of women physicians experience self-reported burnout and 46% of male physicians experience self-reported burnout. Let's dive into the symptoms and the difference. So stress. Stress is omnipresent, right? Stress is everywhere. You and I and my husband and my dog, all of us experience stresses, and work-related stresses are very common. When we experience stress, we have the body natural reaction to any, demand for change. So our bodies are used, and this is evolutionary, to manifest, emotional, mentally response to those pressures and challenges. And there is this concept of what we call the stress curve, also known as Hans-Selye curve or the General Adaptation Syndrome curve, GAS. It illustrates the relationship between stress level and performance. So we need some stress for optimal performance. This curve, the general adaptation or stress curve, I call it stress/burnout curve, reveals that moderate stress can actually enhance our performance It sharpens our focus. It gives us more motivation to work, and it leads to peak performance, unless that stress is too long and or too severe for our adaptation mechanisms to keep up with that, right? So at some point, if stress is not addressed, so stress is at the end of the tunnel, we see the light, right? We see the light, so it's temporary, it will be resolved, we will be fine. We know that, so we keep working hard, we keep working, we are sharp, our focus is sharp. But when we are not getting any relief, mental, emotional, etc., the curve, the stress curve, starts bending down, Erkeda. And when it starts bending down, that shoulder is the situation when we want to catch everyone and want to return everyone to the optimal performance. Because the burnout is an occupational phenomenon that is the consequence of chronic, severe, unresolved work-related stress. And how do we know that's the beginning of burnout? We start experiencing symptoms that we did not experience before. We start being cynical towards our work. We start being emotionally, physically exhausted, Erkeda, to the point that we feel we cannot replenish our energy, that energy is just sipping through our fingers without being adequately replenished. Mental exhaustion, physical exhaustion, emotional exhaustion. And we start distancing ourselves from our work. We start blaming patients on our symptoms. We start blaming colleagues that the patients supposedly, aren't keeping us happy or satisfied enough with our work performance. You follow me? So when this happens, this is burnout. This is not stress anymore. And it's very important to say that burnout is recognized now by the ICD-11 as an occupational phenomenon. It's still not a medical condition. It's an occupational phenomenon deeply rooted in that chronic unresolved stress at work.
And you mentioned that women experience burnout more than men. How do you see that? And do you have any theories as to why?
Of course, women have high propensity to work-related burnout. There are several issues associated with that. Some of them are gender-based bias that women deal with on a daily basis. Some of this is cultural. We as women tend to have more of the imposter syndrome or not believing in our belonging to the profession or being proficient enough to perform our duties. Also, women tend to do what we call a double shift phenomenon, which essentially is when you go to work and do your shift at work, then you come home and you are engaged in home duties, taking care of the kids, taking care of the elderly, the house chores, etc., etc. Women tend to lack opportunities for mentorship just because in those critical specialties where the burnout is more severe, they tend to be male-dominating fields, such as surgical specialties, emergency medicine, cardiology, for instance, where I am in cardiology, and where we are a minority as a gender, we are lacking opportunities for not only for the mentorship, but also for leadership. And that creates a milieu to develop burnout on a higher scale and faster as well. And if you want to dig in even deeper, there are differences in burnout presentation between male healthcare professionals and female healthcare professionals. And interestingly, Dr. Christina Maslach, who is a PhD of psychology at U of C Berkeley in California, she created a tool which we call the Maslach Burnout Inventory. And it has some specifications for students, medical students, for educators, for the general public, etc., but also for medical professionals, for physicians like us. And it has symptomatology that can diagnose that burnout phenomenon. It has a classic triad of burnout, what we call a triad of burnout, consists of energy depletion, of exhaustion, as I mentioned, depersonalization that can manifest as cynicism that I also mentioned, and the sense of ineffectiveness and lack of accomplishment. So men tend to have cynicism, but not feel they are unaccomplished, for instance, right? While females have this classic triad per se. And so this is interesting how the gender differences make, those differences as well. But the earliest symptoms that can be caught in medical students, they are much more profound than that, and they develop early on and starts creeping on you until the full-blown burnout actually takes place. And those symptoms that we would like to pay attention to are things like chronic fatigue, insomnia, despite that sleep deprivation that you mentioned, increased irritability, maybe not even at work. It starts at home, for instance. You are irritated by your dog's behavior, right? That's not normal if it didn't happen before. Pervasive sense of dread about work or about going to medical school on a daily basis, and emotional symptoms, that's detachment, cynicism, etc., etc. So it's imperative for us to recognize those symptoms early on to be able to address those things in the future.
Looking to boost your MCAT score by 10 or 15 points? Med School Coach offers personalized one-on-one tutoring tailored to your specific goals. Our experienced tutors will work with you to create a targeted plan and guide you every step of the way. Join the 10,000 plus students who have trusted Med School Coach to conquer the MCAT and gain admission into medical school. Visit medschoolcoach.com now and use the promo code PODCAST to receive a 5% discount on your first session. MCAT tutoring from Med School Coach. Get started today.
What advice do you have for someone who may be listening now and may recognize that they're suffering from some of these symptoms, or their loved one or a colleague is? Like, how can they address it?
Erkeda, this is a multi-billion-dollar question with the B, because currently the National Task Force estimates the overall cost of physician burnout as $17 billion per year for a healthcare system in America in general. And having said that, the scale of burnout is staggering. There are multiple players in creating burnout and resolving burnout. So I must say that burnout prevention is a collective effort, Erkeda, that requires multiple players and a sense of collective responsibility. And every player who is involved has to pitch in and do their part. And preventing burnout requires addressing root causes through personal strategies, through educational adjustments, through institutional support. So when I talk about fixing provider burnout, I usually look what is the goals, and the goals that manifest themselves into trying to lower the drain and improve the ability to recharge, because the mental health is a continuum, and identifying the players that we can address burnout with. And when we look at the players in burnout, they're so multiple. They include the healthcare technology companies and academic institutions and accreditation bodies and licensing boards and all of those things, and health insurers, etc. But also it involves us as trainees, us as providers. It involves our either training, places of training or work, and it involves our family members and friends. So I always say that an isolated physician, isolated person such as trainee, they cannot really do much with those things that they cannot affect or they cannot influence, right? For instance, change in physician culture takes time, or change in policies takes time. I'm not saying that we don't need to participate in movements that changes culture and policies for the best, but this is a long-term goal. But the short-term goals is we need to address the immediate workplace or immediate place of our studies or medical school, and we need to address our own personal mindset, behaviors, our home environment, our family dynamics. So what individuals can do is to address those things, and the training period is an excellent time to familiarize oneself with the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. Why? Because this is a medical specialty that uses therapeutic lifestyle interventions as a primary modality that treats chronic conditions. And the studies show that those individuals, physicians or trainees who practice lifestyle interventions on their patients in their everyday practice, they tend to feel better about their work performance and have much higher satisfaction with their employment satisfaction. So it's time to get familiar with the lifestyle medicine, the College of Lifestyle Medicine. Organizations like the American Medical Association, like the American Association of Medical Colleges, the American College of Lifestyle Medicine that I already mentioned, outlined burnout prevention strategies and offered toolkits for trainees specifically. But again, it's essential to remember that those toxic workplaces as the primary cause of burnout, they must be addressed, starting with leadership initiatives and bringing all the parties to the table so the administrators, the leaders can hear medical students, their problems, and act accordingly. So it's crucial to understand that the burnout is fundamentally caused by workplaces. So the American Medical Association has this toolkit, a medical student well-being toolkit, and it lists like 7 interventions or steps to minimize burnout in medical students, starting with recognizing shared responsibility, measuring student well-being and burnout levels, and acting on those stats accordingly, optimizing the training curriculum, perhaps minimizing those courses that are not immediately necessary for the person who wants to be an ophthalmologist, not to study OBGYN in depth, for instance. I'm just saying, optimizing this learning community. I think that the community factor is of paramount priority while you're in medical school, when you're in residency, and when you become a practicing physician, because the community exists, you feel supported, you feel that you're not alone with your problems. When the community goes away, and that happens frequently in very fresh physicians, fresh out of residency, when they lose their sense of community and their attachment to a certain group, they feel isolated and they start stressing out much more than they're supposed to be. Institutions like hospitals, training hospitals, residency program must actively involve residents in decision-making and seeking their solution, implementing their solution, not just tell them what to do, not just, keeping them at a hectic pace. They need to know what those people want. And sometimes the solutions that come from trainees are the best solutions. So I encourage everyone who watches us and listens to jump in and become wellness advocates early on, because you, the youngest generation of the future physicians, will be writing and living those policies in the future. And I think that training programs must start including the lifestyle medicine curricula and the wellness curricula in their training programs, including the resilience training, the mindfulness and the stress management techniques, et cetera, et cetera.
It sounds like it's a multidisciplinary effort where you have to, number one, address and recognize that you are struggling, seek out your community, don't be alone, figure out what resources there are. You named a few, like the American Medical Association and things that have some tips for you and resources, but then it falls on the institution to promote lifestyle medicine, to promote wellness, to incorporate it into their curricula, as well as work on getting feedback and incorporating actual people who are on the front lines of the education system or the workplace to join and figure out what people need, because it's not a cookie cutter answer.
Remember that Dr. Lorna Breen Healthcare Provider Protection Act that came out in 2021 after a physician, the emergency room physician from New York, Dr. Lorna Breen, committed suicide. So they started the foundation in her name. And the licensure boards that take care of our first license or the renewal on our license must follow the recommendations of the Protection Act and remove that intrusive language from the license application, Erkeda, that, stops physicians frequently and stops trainees from seeking mental help, or because they are afraid of repercussions. They're afraid of problems with licensing boards, with renewal license in the future, of them digging into their personal mental health records, because this is a common practice now. And so I'm glad to hear that 27 states already followed the lead and changed that intrusive language that they used to have on their medical license applications. And 11 more states are in the process of changing that language. However, we're still 27 plus 11, we're still left with 12 states that have not acted on it yet, and I think they should. I also wanted to mention that for professionals or for medical trainees, individuals specifically, the key strategies would be to try to live and practice their own values. You follow me? So when one does not live or practice medicine according to own values, and they're forced to do what they were told by the administration, by their superiors, that tremendously reduces work satisfaction and in general triggers burnout. It's probably one of the most important things, that people have to believe in what they do, have to be aligned with the strategies their medical institution is following, and they have to have a keen sense of boundaries when they stop working. They stop working when they come home. Mentally, they should put the emails aside. They should not be checking their charts or doing their charts after work. Creating professional and personal life boundaries. And of course, engaging in hobbies and building supportive relationship. All of that will increase their energy replenishment as opposed to depletion.
I love that. I feel as though you've given so many strategies and talked about boundaries and talked about how people can kind of put themselves first and be mission aligned in terms of what organization you're working for. Because if you're feeling a certain way and they're not supportive, it may not be the best place for you, or you may be ready for your next phase in life. So as we come to a close, I just want to ask you, number one, if people are needing more resources or help, how can they reach out to your organization, and where can they find your book?
Of course, that's actually pretty easy. So we are CardioSeeds.com. One can find us on the internet. www.CardioSeeds.com. They can check out our programs and register. We have great reduction in prices and offerings, great offerings for trainees, including medical students and residents. On our wellness programs, we really offer so much. We have them personalized to one's personal needs and wants. We can do it 10 hours. We can do it on a continuous basis as a membership, a VIP membership. So my book, Resilience in Scrubs is on Amazon. And the spoiler, actually, that I'm working on the sequel to this book that will be published by Healthy Learning. And the sequel to this book will be Women Physician Survival Guide from Residency through Retirement. So I will be including all the information, toolkits, etc., for burnout prevention from the period of training to retirement. This book now is available on Amazon in both Kindle and the paperback formats, and the future book will be hopefully available next year. I'm submitting my manuscript this month.
Congratulations. And that looks like some people will definitely need to keep an eye out for, because it covers the whole continuum from the start of your career into the next phase.
That's exactly right.
Really appreciate you joining us today. So I just want to give you a chance to tell the audience goodbye.
Thank you so much, Erkeda. And I hope that our listeners and viewers take some tools and take some guidance and take care of their health and wellness early on in their training, so they remain robust, they remain happy and healthy throughout their medical careers. And thank you for inviting me.
If you like this episode, please share it and make sure to subscribe anywhere you get your podcasts. You can also find me, Dr. Erkeda DeRouen, on Instagram at Dr. DGram, DOCTOR, the letter DGRAM, or on LinkedIn under my name, Erkeda DeRouen. See you guys next week.
Each episode of the Prospective Doctor podcast is brought to you by Med School Coach. To access articles, videos, webinars, and free tools to help you succeed on your journey toward med school and beyond, visit our website, prospectivedoctor.com. We hope you tune in again next time.
In the competitive world of medical school, your application is the first look advisors have into what makes you shine. But where do you start? Luckily, Med School Coach has the expertise to elevate your application to the next level. From crafting a compelling personal statement to developing a narrative for your secondary essays, we know what admissions committees are looking for, and we're here to help you develop your authentic voice. Visit medschoolcoach.com for more on application support.